Welcome back to another fun-filled episode of Tiger Bytes. We're here for a second go-round with David Hinson, who's the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies in the College of Architecture, Design, and Construction. Welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here.
We had a great discussion last time about your course and also about some of the things going on architecturally in Auburn. Had a few more things we wanted to ask you about. Today, one is in terms of how the field of architecture is evolving. And, you can just walk across campus and see how architecture evolves over time. You have something like Sanford Hall that's very ornate and beautiful. You have something like the Haley Center that would look perfectly normal in the Soviet Union, say 1967.
Okay.
You have
Probably right.
New and exciting buildings like our graduate building in the College of Business. As the field evolves, how do you ensure that your professional practice course remains relevant and prepares students for a rapidly changing profession?
I think that's a great question, and one of the critical ideas here is that I think the architects of the future are going to find their practices grounded in why to advising for their clients as opposed to just what to advising.
Yeah.
Technologies that are kind of changing the way we do everything these days are going to those technologies can easily adapt to the technical how to build this detail or how to do this process, but they're not going to be able to do the why should you do this kind of advising, judgment-based skills that I think are really what is the value add for architects. So one of the things I try to do in this course is really build in the eyes and minds of the students the idea that actually is their value to the process, is the kind of being able to make these why to arguments, and then asking them to think about, well, what are the critical skills that you need to master in order to be able to do that well, right? An example of this course tries to tackle, they're really versed in project design. That's what we think about when we think about what architects do, but we do try to do a deep dive into process design, right? Part of your job is making sure that the right people are involved in the kind of input shaping stage of this project, and you need to be well versed at not only identifying who those people are, but designing the process to get them in the room at the right time, giving the input at the right time. That's a process design skill, and that's a key part of what's going to make you an impactful and relevant practitioner. And it empowers and complements your skill as a designer when you can do that really well. Those are a, kind of a big part of what I'm trying to introduce into this class is, things like the basics of communication kind of science, right? The
people skills.
How do we work in teams? Yeah. What are the kind of core competencies of conflict resolution and negotiation that are critical to working successfully in team-based environments? Because that's what they're going to do for the rest of their professional life. Right. So that's, I think, how we create a much longer shelf life for the knowledge that they have if it's focused on this why to process design skill set in addition to their kind of core skills of kind of what we think of as traditional design skills.
I can imagine that those people skills are incredibly important in this context because buildings are emotional. People
absolutely.
Have emotional reactions to them. And they're also very expensive. And so if people aren't shepherded along, if they don't feel like they're a participant in the process, they're not necessarily buying into the building that they end up with.
That's a core principle of process design, right? You have to give people a chance to weigh in if you want them to buy in, right? So that's part of some of the things we talk about in this course is that, if we look at a kind of a graph of kind of input and question asking, we call it question seeking in our process. when you do that at the front end of the process, it has tremendously more impact, much more impact on the outcome of the project than if you're trying to punch that in at the end of the process um, design. So, being able to think about what are the right questions to ask,
Mm.
who are the right people to assemble to provide input on answering those questions, getting the question right is such an important part of a design skill. And you don't if you ask a layperson what do architects do,
Design
that's
buildings.
not going to
Yeah.
come up on the list, right? But it's so important to their future success.
Mm. I want to ask you a little bit about specific tools and strategies that you have found most effective in promoting two-way discussions and critical analysis in your class. And before we came on the air, so to speak, we talked a little bit about classroom design and what sort of classrooms are suitable and not suitable to your new style of teaching.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. Now, you would think as a professional architect of 40 plus years, I would have understood implicitly, that the design of the classroom and the design of the learning experience go hand in hand. But it wasn't until I had the opportunity to teach in this case, the ACLC building for the first time with this new course design that sort of clicked for me in a really tangible way. This in-class engagement is best done in small groups. So my students are organized into teams of 3 and 4, and those classrooms allow them to sit in kind of clusters of 2 teams. So when I want to turn a question back to the class and say, okay, now I want you to discuss this within your team, they don't have to get up and move around. The space is already there to facilitate that. And now that I've kind of taught in that environment, I can't imagine going back and teaching this class in a traditional
Mm.
auditorium style class. I'd have to redesign the class.
Right.
And so I think that the first key to kind of designing engagement is having the right room, right?
Seems really
It
simple.
seems really simple, but the room is an obstacle.
Right.
You're leaning into a pretty strong headwind from day one on the course, and I think again that's a challenge at our campus is transitioning from a campus infrastructure that was built decades ago around those more
Lectures.
traditional lecture model to this new kind of mode of teaching, which if you've done it, um, I think you can't imagine going back, right? So that's a key thing I've learned. I mentioned earlier in our first discussion that I'm still learning how to design these in-class active learning exercises, how to structure questions for the group discussion that produces, sort of challenges them to think critically about the content. And to do that in small activities, I can't design a 90-minute exercise. I've got to do something that they can do quickly in like
Right.
5 minutes. And so, learning how to pace the course, kind of toggle back and forth between small group reflection and engagement and then full group discussion is something I'm gaining experience with and trying to get a little bit better with each semester.
I'm going to take the opportunity because you're in an administrative role as well as having done this course redesign. Wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about career stages. I've been
Yeah,
doing
great
this
question.
since '93, so we're roughly the same time out. Um, Given the amount of work that goes into a course redesign, would you consider this to be like a post tenure? Like you better have tenure before you take
Wow,
something
that's a
like
great
this
experience.
on?
As we worked on this course, it felt a lot like being in those first couple of years of my career as a teacher. That new course prep load was pretty intense, and if you add to it the teaching a new model to new format, that's kind of
Right.
doubles down on that level of intensity. However, I would think that a as an administrator, I would say an administrator with foresight would recognize the long-term value of that and would try to build around a young faculty member who wanted to pursue this the the resources that would help make that successful.
So maybe give that person a course release if
Yeah.
they're going to
Well,
do
and,
this.
like my engagement with the Big EO Center team required some investment by my college,
Right.
and I would certainly say that was a good investment. And I would say it's just as valuable to invest in a younger faculty member, probably more valuable
Right.
than invest
Right.
in somebody at my career stage, right? Because of how many years of impact you'll get out of that investment. So I think you can tackle this pre-tenure if your college is going to give you the right level of support for it. Don't be afraid of it.
So at some point you're going to retire.
Mm.
To what extent are the materials that you developed transferable to a new instructor who would take over the class?
Well, I can't imagine anybody ever taking over my class because it's mine. But no, I actually have thought about that very
Yeah.
much. I think an interesting thing here is I'm kind of in the stage where I'm close enough to retirement to kind of have a clock in my head.
Right.
But I think this course is structured in a way that I could continue teaching that course for a while, and not indefinitely, but for a little while. But it's also structured in a way that somebody else could easily step in and use the platform, um, uh, and and not have to start from not to jump that fence from flat-footed standing still. So I think that's both another kind of advantage. Um, the the other opportunity that I think it opens up is that there's a possibility to take this class, now that we've got the infrastructure around it, there's a possibility to take this class. It would require a little bit more work, but into a fully asynchronous kind of model, and
Right.
actually open it up to students outside the university, and that's to faculty members and their administrative leadership. There are several colleges that do that very, very well here at Auburn, and that becomes another way to expand the reach of the course as well as generate some income for both the university and the instructor. So if you think about carry-on advantages to this front-end investment, there's more than you might think of at first.
Well, thanks for joining us again, David. I've really appreciated the chance to talk with
It's
you
great.
and get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you, Dave. I've really enjoyed it.
Hello, podcast listeners and viewers. My name is Cheryl O'Leary, and I am an instructional technology specialist too with the Big EO Center for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning at Auburn University. My main focus of my work is maintaining the technology components that are located within Auburn's 41 provost-designated EASL classrooms across campus. EASL stands for Engaged Active Student Learning, and we have 41 of those across campus. I also manage a student staff of 13 who will provide real-time support for these rooms during the academic day from 7:45 to 4:45, Monday through Friday. So that means if something goes wrong with the technology while you're teaching or before you're teaching or right after you're teaching, you can let us know by pinging us with the QR code that's located and taped to the lecterns at the front of those EASL classrooms. If you've been assigned to one of these classrooms, that's great. If you haven't ever had the opportunity to sign up to teach in one of the classrooms that have the enhanced technology, then you can contact Big EO1 through email. That's the email, bigeo1@auburn.edu. And you can see what the course workshop, the EASL workshop schedule is, and hopefully sign up for that EASL workshop so that you too can be certified to teach in an EASL room where they talk about pedagogy and theory behind EASL type teaching, active student learning teaching. We'd love to see you there, and I would be there too to talk you through the tech that we actually have deployed in those 41 rooms. Those EASL rooms are a little bit different. Instead of those rows of desks facing the front, like in a typical lecture style auditorium, or more like some of the older classrooms in Haley, maybe Parker, instead of that, there's flexible furniture, which is all steel case in our classrooms. which includes rolling tables, tables with wheels, and chairs that can be moved around. And the furniture can be adjusted and moved however you need to set it up for that class. We have two different kinds of easel classrooms here at Auburn. One is considered full easel, and then the other one is considered easel light. The full easel rooms are what I would call probably easel advanced. Those are the rooms that have monitors embedded into the walls behind glass whiteboards. For instance, if you're ever in Mel 3550 on the Mel side, if you go in, you'll see that there are 12 monitors embedded in the wall, and that is to support moving the furniture into 2-section table pods with 6 people around, so you can have small group interaction and small group learning, peer reviewing, peer learning, small groups, case studies, that kind of thing in those groups. And those students have access to a monitor specifically for their pod. You can book an easel consultation or an easel tech classroom consultation one-on-one with me, and I can run you through how all of that equipment works and maybe some troubleshooting for if you're teaching in those classrooms already, troubleshooting how to use that equipment or how to get it back running quicker than maybe we can with our few minutes of response time. The easel light does not have the monitors embedded into the wall, but they do have a projector and a projection screen. So those are your two options here on Auburn's campus. Full easel, we have less of those that have the monitors embedded in the walls, and then easel light, which has a kind of a more traditional. It still has the movable furniture. You can still move the room around however you need to. That just has one projector or two that's up on the front where you can share lesson material. All of the rooms, easel, full easel, easel light, they all have what we call the solstice pods, which is our Wi-Fi sharing technology here on campus. And what that means is the students, once they've signed in to the Solstice app that is easily downloadable with when it's up on the monitors, the Solstice URL, they sign in and they can share information from their own device to that monitor, which is embedded in the wall, or even the projector that's up on the ceiling. The idea is to get those kids up, moving and learning with movement, which is found to work for a lot of people. If they move, they tend to remember more of the learning. Even quick transitions between subject matter can help to make them remember the items better. If you are interested in easel spaces, please contact Big EO1. If you would like to book some time with me, you can book me at aub.ie/easeltechbook, EASLTECHBOOK, all lowercase, all together. And I'm happy to meet with you, even in the classroom you'll be teaching in, if we can find a time when somebody else isn't teaching in there. If you need more information about how to teach engaged active student learning, please contact Big EO at Big EO1, and we have so many workshops that will help you to either settle into your easel room or improve your regular room. These theories and practices apply even to those rooms.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Tiger Bytes. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained some valuable insights. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. You can find us on all major platforms. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time on Tiger Bytes.